That's fascist, communist, dictatorship, Nazi.
Yeah.
The Last Unicorn?
And socialism.
The Last Unicorn is about socialism and that, because the big red bull, we know what that's supposed to signify. And we are live, everyone.
Woo!
Welcome here to the spoiler room. Oh, it's spicy already here tonight. And it is Deaduary. Thank you for joining us for Deaduary. And we're kicking off this month with a classic, because all the films this month are going to have the word dead in it. And they only are 2 words, too. That's how I challenged myself, and I managed to do it. So tonight, yes, folks, we are looking at Dead Alive, a.k.a. Braindead. And I have a wonderful crew assembled tonight to discuss this classic from the gentleman who brought you the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I love saying that.
Wait, who's on here besides us?
Wow.
And there you heard his dulcet tones. He's back with us once again. None other than the BFD himself. Hello, Glenn. How are you, sir? And Glenn says hi.
I'm good. I'm good.
He has wonderful gestures for radio. It's great. It's
And a face to match.
And a face to match. And yes, we also have with us the diva in the spoiler room. She's back with us once again, Miss Dawn. Hello, Dawn. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you, Mark. Good evening, gentlemen.
Glad to have you in here for the perspective. And yes, he is back with us again. Once again, the guy's just a glutton for punishment, I tell you. He is a Rotten Tomatoes critic, among other things. Mr. Ian Simmons is with us tonight. Hello, Ian. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm a glutton for lots of things, including custard with bloody pus inserted into it.
Custard. Custard. Haven't had that in a long time.
I won't be having it for a long time afterwards. That scene. I know we're jumping ahead, but I've not watched this movie in probably in more than 10 years. And one of the reasons is for that scene. It really put me off certain foods. And then watching it again yesterday and today, all over again. So thanks, Mark.
Nice and creamy, just the way I like it.
So, Don, for those few people out there who have not heard of this film, first, shame on you, folks. And now, why don't you give the synopsi for Dead Alive, a.k.a. Braindead?
Oh, goodness. So we have a young man, Lionel, who lives with his incredibly overprotective mother. And he becomes romantically entangled with the local shopkeeper, Paquita. And they manage to go on a date to the zoo where overprotective mother gets bitten by a Sumatran rat monkey. She gets the bite and becomes infected, turns into a zombie, and starts infecting people, including the local nurse, the local pastor, some random punk kid who is pissing on her grave. And yeah.
Keep going. I'm loving this. The synopsis is just making me laugh.
Okay, so ultimately, Lionel manages to get some tranquilizers off of, hey, yeah, here's our Nazi tie-in. Here's our Nazi tie-in from a local Nazi in hiding who is a veterinarian.
Well, this was also only 12 years after World War II ended, so it makes more sense.
Yes. So he tranquilizes her, fakes her death. She gets buried. So the creepy uncle comes around, sniffing around, insisting that, my sister was going to leave the house to me, blah, blah, whatever. ends up finding out that Lionel is keeping zombies in the house. Threatens them, has a big party. The zombies get loose. Mom eats everybody with her oddly opening womb.
That's
Don't
worse than
forget-
the custard. Thanks.
Don't
Sean.
forget the zombie baby that was born from the priest and the nurse getting busy on the dinner table.
Yeah.
God, I love this movie. This movie is just phenomenally, awesomely fucked up
Yes, it is.
in every way possible.
And believe it or not, an early homage to King Kong.
Among other things, but definitely
Among other
King Kong,
things, yeah.
because it opens on Skull Island.
It certainly does.
And that's where they get the Sumatran rat monkey from.
Because, the giant rats hop off the ship and raped all the little tree monkeys.
The zookeeper guy going, the story is the slavers stopped by the island and the rats came along and raped all the monkeys. And I'm just like, that's not how that works. That's just...
How did he know that story, by the way?
It's common knowledge. It's
Sure. Yeah.
It's Encyclopedia Britannica. See, you don't get that anymore. You got the internet. You don't get the Encyclopedia Britannica, which tells you about the origins of the Sumatran rat monkey. Glenn, do you remember when you first saw this movie?
I do remember when I first saw this movie. It was on VHS.
Ooh.
It was at a friend's house. Everyone in the room except for me was stoned. And I asked to borrow it, and I never gave the tape back. Not like I kept it intentionally. I borrowed it, and then I forgot I had it, and then he moved away.
Yeah.
And then I remember pulling this out on a first date.
That's your litmus test, huh?
She liked horror, and I said, "Have you ever seen Dead Alive?" And she said, "No." So we watched that. I dated her for like 6 months. So
there you go. Passed the litmus test. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was my second. That was my second viewing of the movie. Was that one? So yeah, but yeah, good movie. Good movie.
That's a great litmus test, because you can't just show it to a rando like, oh, I like movies. If you show it to someone who loves or likes or loves horror movies and then they really enjoy it, that's great. If they love horror movies and they don't like Dead Alive, you just gotta cut your losses.
I should say she liked horror movies. She specifically said her favorite horror movie was Evil Dead. So have you seen?
Then that's definitely a great logical conclusion of,
yes.
Have you seen Dead Alive?
Oh, she remembers you probably not just as like a first love, but as the
Dead Alive.
the person who introduced me to Dead Alive.
Don, what about you? Remember when you first saw Dead Alive?
Barely. Oh my gosh, it was 20 plus years ago. Sheldon brought it home from work because one of his coworkers found out I liked horror, popped it in. I think I went out shopping and found a copy like within the week. But yeah, I made my best friend watch this and she never forgave me. Yeah. It actually made her physically sick.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
And Mr. Simmons, what about you? First time you watched this film, you remember?
I think I said 10 years ago. It was probably closer to 15 or 20, because I was thinking I saw this way before we had our first kid. But yeah, this is only the second time I watched. The first time I saw it, I think a friend of mine had, we were both big horror fans and loved Evil Dead 2 and all that stuff. And he's like, "You've never seen Dead Alive?" I'm like, "No, it's one of those movies I've always heard about, but I'd never seen." So we popped it in and I loved it. Strangely enough, I don't love it as much anymore. And I don't know if that's because, how many different cuts are there of this thing?
There's a number of them. Mr. Derek Carey a good friend of the Spoiler Room, he's a big fan of this film. He sent me the link for the actual gory version, which you should see, because there's like an 87-minute version, there's a 97-minute version, and then there's like 100. The one that he linked to me, which is on YouTube, is like 103 minutes or something.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he said
that's what I watched. I put in my Blu-ray yesterday, and I watched the first half hour, and then I came back today to finish, and I put in the Blu-ray, and for some reason it wouldn't get off the like the menu didn't come up. The menu screen came up with like the girl with the distended face, and they're like playing scenes of the movie inside of her mouth, but the actual options didn't come up. And I was like, I don't have time for this. So I went to YouTube and I found the uncut version. I was like, this is 15 minutes longer than the one I was watching yesterday. And so I watched, and I think that's one of the reasons I don't like it as much, because I'm like, there is a lot of weird filler in this thing.
There are some extended scenes in there, especially there's 2 scenes at least that I noticed, because funny thing is I watched it the first hour, and then I mentioned to Mr. Derek Carey, yeah, we're watching this for the show, and he's like, oh no, you gotta watch this cut. So I stopped the version that I was watching an hour into it because I enjoy this movie so much, and I started it again, and I'm like, but then having them back to back, I noticed the differences a lot more. Like there's 2 scenes, especially with creepy uncle and Paquita, that are very disturbing, that make his character even more disturbing than it already is. Because he comes up behind her and starts he says a few more words with her. They have a longer exchange outside, and then in the church he actually sits behind her and says some few things that make everybody feel uncomfortable, and then she gets up and she moves to the pews. And then when you cut in the 90-some minute cut where they cut and she's sitting down, that's like the second time she's actually sits down in the church. You missed the first time where she sits with the uncle behind her. So that, and I just noticed a few other things as well. I'm like, it's a lot of little extra bits of dialogue, which you can tell why those were trimmed out a bit, but also you do have the extra longer gory stuff happening in that wonderful third act.
And there are also like other weird differences, like not even just
quality,
gore scenes, but in quality, because you can tell there's the stuff that wasn't like, color corrected and, fully integrated into the movie. And it's strange because usually when you're watching a slasher film, they have the ungraded cut and they don't finish the scenes, just kind of plop them in. You can tell because the film quality changes. But here it's like a scene where someone's chasing someone else around the kitchen. They'll do like an insert of a few seconds of just like more chasing. I'm like, what? It was clear the first time.
You can kind of tell with that cut on YouTube, the complete cut or whatever, that they used footage that they found elsewhere on the internet and edited it in there properly. I haven't even had that much to drink. Leave me alone. Anyway, I don't know what it is with this film, but it's so bonkers yet so appealing. There's so many things that hit the right notes for what I look for in like a crazy horror film, especially this one. And you still get the indie film type stuff where there's lots of references and influences. But again, way back then, and yes, this is my lawn moment. Enjoy my lawn while you're here. Cut the grass. The references, I think, and that the homages or whatever just aren't just blatant. Hey, look, we're doing this homage. I think the most subtle is with the mom, because Dawn, is that some mommy dearest stuff going on with her look and everything?
For sure. For sure.
I mean, I'm like, that's some Betty Davis shit going on right there.
Well, I will notice in the, the climactic flashback when Lionel remembers the truth of what happened to his parents or his dad.
His dad and that blonde woman.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the character's words, not mine. The scene where we actually see Lionel's mom drowning the dad in the bathtub.
Yeah.
She looked like Michael Caine in a dress. It was very strange. It was the same actress, but whatever they did to like, de-age her in terms of the makeup and the outfit, I was like, it's a choice.
Glad you look thoughtful, sir.
Yeah.
You got that. Mommy Dearest vibes from old mom here from Lionel?
It's the WLWL. Yes, of course I do. Yeah.
But I mean, that's just one of the many references. We've mentioned it here. Ian, you mentioned your friend liked Evil Dead 2. There's Evil Dead influence throughout this film, I think. There's
and that's one of the, I'm sorry to say, the other contributing factors is like I've seen the Evil Dead 2 way more than I've seen Dead Alive, and watching it this time, like there's so much Evil Dead 2 in this movie that it just I appreciate the filmmaking of it and the independent spirit of a young, Peter Jackson, like doing his own version of that. I think it's awesome, but like narratively, I'm like he can't get out of the shadow of Sam Raimi in here.
Yeah, but I don't know if he was intending to or just doing the homage. Robert,
I mean, it almost doesn't matter because it's like...
No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter anyway. Robert Infobaum mentions Michael Caine in a dress, shades of De Palma from Dress to Kill. It is rather, that kill scene is somewhat De Palma-esque, I think. I mean, Peter Jackson is definitely wearing his influences on his sleeve in this film. Wouldn't you say, Glenn, that a lot of his influences are just, he's like, is he doing just kind of the homage thing where it's still his own thing, but you could definitely see all the influences from past horror films?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, tons of influences. And his idea of an homage is let's take it up a notch. Or, 100 gallons or so.
Or 300 liters or so. Just
300. And that 300 liters was just for that final scene.
Right. Yeah. So. The bonkers third act, which it's funny because watching it again, I'm like, okay, this is kind of playing out like, even with the music, early Full Moonish in many ways, the way it pulls, the way it's put together and everything. It's got kind of a full moon vibe to it, with the way the music and the way it's directed and everything, the way it's kind of crazy, but it's still keeping it coherent a bit. And then the film, just as it progresses, it just gets more and more bonkers till you get to the party. And then by then, whatever narrative is tossed out the window. It was like, oh, we're done with the story now. Let's just... But I think that's the appeal of it for me, is just the fact that here's a guy who's got talent. I mean, this is Peter Jackson. Yes, for the millennials out there, the guy who brought you Lord of the Rings made a huge practical granny puppet naked with an opening womb.
that ate a guy. I mean, that's
yeah. Yep.
Oh.
And that's what I love about it. The fact that, the fact he opens with Skull Island, as we mentioned, and what's even funnier is how it comes full circle where he actually does King Kong years later and mentions a Sumatra monkey. I believe it's referenced in like one of the crates on the ship in the new Kong, in his Kong. Yeah. There's a Sumatra rat monkey case.
Yep.
I think it even goes further. I'm pretty sure I read that one of the guys at the zoo, after Lionel's mom gets bit, the guy that takes the picture was also in one of the early King Kong movies.
Yeah, that was Ackerman.
Yeah,
that was Ackerman, who was a man running from King Kong back in the day.
Wow.
And it's fun too, because especially now we look at it years later, and of course with Jackson's popularity, you get to find out all these little tidbits. Like, I will say, the miniature work for what he did, because this is a period piece, folks. This isn't taking place in the 90s. This is in the 50s.
57.
That it's taking 57. So in the big scenes, you actually have cars that are supposed to be from that period, and they look very much like it. But he's got miniature work in here that, watching it even again this time, I'm like, if I hadn't seen the behind the scenes stuff to tell me that was a miniature, in all honesty, I couldn't tell. Those trolley scenes are miniatures, most of them. And I didn't know at all until I looked at it real closely. And then I looked at the people inside because I knew he had done miniature. Like, okay, that's a miniature shot. But I mean, Ian, isn't it impressive that, I mean, he came in under budget too. The work that he did on this film for the time and everything. I mean, even if you don't like horror, can you appreciate the craftsmanship that went into this film?
Oh, for sure. What do you know what the budget was?
I'm not sure offhand. Let me look it up here real quick. I that's the one note I didn't grab, and I apologize for that. But
I'm not
budget was $3 million.
Oh, there you go.
I'm not up on my Peter Jackson lore. Where was this his? This wasn't his first film.
No,
early on,
no,
right?
because he had done
Second
Meet
or
the
third.
he did. This is I
Meet
think
the Feebles, right?
And
Meet
The
the
bad taste.
and Bad Taste.
Okay.
And actually, a song from Meet the Feebles is what's playing on the organ in the church for the funeral.
Well, I mean, but even okay, so $3 million is, it's not chump change,
No,
right? But it's still quite amazing to see what he pulls off in this film. I mean, you talk about the miniatures. I'm thinking about the cargo plane or whatever that's going from Skull Island, back to New Zealand. The first shots of it we see are very clearly models against a really, well done sky, and then he cuts that in with actual footage of, I guess he just happened to catch a plane landing, and he melded. Now the stuff with the miniature of the cargo plane, it looks good, but it doesn't look real, but it looks almost intentionally, we're talking about homages. It looks like it was done to recreate that feeling of, older films where they clearly didn't have footage of planes landing. They put in a fake sky and, miniatures and the sounds. So in that sense, yeah, it's a perfect encapsulation, I think, of his vision, capturing that period piece, not just in the clothing, but in the way that he treated his special effects up until we get to, the splatterific third act. But even that, I just love the idea that, as I was starting to kind of tune out during that third act, because it's so crazy that once you spend, once you're on minute like 7 of, just blood flying at the camera and stuff like that, you kind of like, yeah, okay, is there more to this? I mean, this is the 15 minutes of, quote unquote extra goodness. But then he'll throw in something like a really creative gag, like the woman who gets thrown against the light bulb, and then she ends up like this glowing party favor throughout the rest of the movie. There's the half greaser zombie who keeps popping up, and he ends up underneath or on spinning like a top on the lawnmower and then disintegrating. It's just, it's really fun and cool stuff. And I can understand people say, how did he go from doing Dead Alive to The Frighteners to Lord of the Rings? I think the answer is right here in this movie. He can make something that's $3 million. You can see that he would take $100 million or whatever and give him Middle Earth and come up with something, mind blowing and Oscar worthy.
well, I mean, we've had this discussion before. I know I've talked with Dawn and Glenn. I think I've talked to you as well, sir. Kind of the reason why people are surprised when they say, "Oh, they got this indie horror guy to direct this superhero film." Would you say it's because they know how to work with a limited budget and get the most out of it? Yeah? No?
Yeah.
Maybe so.
I thought that was a question for Glenn.
Oh, it was sorry, a question for Glenn, but and Glenn nodded yes. So that's all he had to say. But so I think that's why you get these guys. You get the you get the Raimis, and you get Jackson, and you get Zack Snyder, James Gunn. You get these guys,
the Russos,
the Russos, all these guys who, for as much as people shit on like indie horror and that, it's like, yeah, but these guys are showing their talent here, and especially for, I will say, in the hands of like a basic director, like some schmuck or whatever, Dead Alive does not hit. But Peter Jackson is making this schlocky, over the top homage to horror and graphicness, and yet he's got that talent. You can see the talent here because this film works a lot better than it should have. Wouldn't you say, Don?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I mean,
but he had a lot of support though,
mm-hmm.
because with New Zealand is a small community, and he had a lot of support locally to get this stuff done,
mm-hmm.
which is awesome. And a lot of filmmakers don't have that kind of support. Even though they didn't always approve of what he was making, they still supported him.
Right, because he was making something local. He was using local talent. Which all these people, this isn't one of those where most of these people did not go on to do things. The majority of the people on camera with dialogue have gone on, and some of them are still working today quite regularly from this film. That is just so bizarre. Yeah, I mean, you've got like you mentioned, Don, you can have romance in here between Fakita and Lionel, which, the two leads, they're wonderful. They play off each other. I mean, what do you think of that relationship, Don?
I think it's great. The one of the things I like about the treatment of it is clearly it was always intended to be a horror comedy, a black comedy, but they played it as straight as they possibly could, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Now the romance, such as it is between the priest and the nurse.
The priest and the nurse.
Yeah, that's definitely more over the top.
The two zombie love.
Zombie
love.
They keep escalating it too. I mean, at the very end, they're both run through the giant pole, and yet we get to see them,
having
working on another
another zombie baby.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know how that works, because I mean, all that fluid should be dead. Maybe it's dead alive, but
probably, maybe. I don't know.
I do want to pull over just highlight how much the Lionel Paquita thing works, because even though it comes after like the 15-minute opening, which is like King Kong meets Raiders meets zombie monkeys, we come into this quaint little 1957 New Zealand town, and we meet this shop girl who's got her grandparents, and she has her fortune read, and she's like, you're gonna meet someone, and you'll know him by like a star and a moon, and this doofus comes in to buy something, and she's like, oh, but I guess you're the one. I would have watched that romantic comedy of them like having this cosmic misunderstanding, because they're so charming and cute, and then to see them get derailed by this other adventure, I'm like, I don't mind, because I'm still spending time with these characters that I watch do anything.
Your mother ate my dog.
Not all of it.
Not all of it. And yet she kind of rolls with it, I mean,
well, it's fate. You can't mess with that. Yeah. She's not going to walk out on them, because they're destined to be together because of the stars and the moon.
An interesting little connection is the grandma who's using the tarot cards, which I believe I saw trivia that it's all from one same deck, except two cards didn't actually belong to that deck. That's how it shows you how people pay attention to these things. Mm-hmm. Anyway, she plays the Black Knight card, which is supposed to represent Lionel. He, early in the film, tries to buy Black Knight licorice. The licorice she buys at the counter is Black Knight licorice.
And when we first see him in the shop, there's like a close-up of him looking at some crackers or something, and mm-hmm. It's like Starlight crackers or Moonlight crackers or something. Yeah. There's some kind of a tie in there too. Yeah.
So I mean, there's all those little tiny references or things or callbacks or whatever in here as well. A little bit of nuance outside of the in-your-face gore, which I remember the promos for this film, because it's got theatrical release in the U.S. It was controversial because of the gore. I remember people talking about Dead Alive Forever and what rating it was going to get because of the gore and the blood. And, there's some. Okay, there's a lot.
But that's very interesting to me, because like I can understand sort of a straight horror movie like Hellraiser 2 or something, where you've got these gore effects that are meant to be frightening and disturbing and, could traumatize a 13-year-old. You don't want to necessarily have someone under 18 watching that. But Dead Alive, even though the gore effects are not necessarily anatomically correct, but there is a lot of human entrails and blood spilled. But I can't see anybody going and watching this, and maybe aside from the custard scene, which messed me up pretty well. But that was even a PG-13 effect pretty much. But I mean, this is something that's meant to be, enjoyed and laughed at. It's not graphic violence in the sense that I think the concern was initially raised over showing that stuff in movies.
It's not Martyrs.
That's right. That's all of my rambling. I could have just said it's not Martyrs. That's the perfect analogy. Goddamn, Martyrs was rough.
Martyrs is rough, but I mean that starts the conversation a bit of context for your gore, I think, as well, and people miss that sometimes because none of this is meant to be. This is like Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers in a way for its gore, in that you had someone off screen, for that one you had someone off screen just throwing fake body parts, and if you count the body parts, there's like 3 feet and like 4 hands or whatever being thrown. It's not meant to be intensely serious.
Oh, speaking of body parts, I mean, there's that scene in the climax in the kitchen where the uncle is going crazy with the knives, and then you cut back like a minute later, and I think it's like Lionel walks into the kitchen or Paquita or whoever, and he's just standing there. There's like this pile of like chopped up body parts. It's a total like Daffy Duck, Bugs Bunny moment, but with realistic, human body parts. It's amazing.
Glenn, what's your feeling with the gore? Just all meant to be in good fun?
Oh yeah, I mean it's so over the top and so just out there. I mean, this is not in any way like trying to be realistic.
Yeah, or even scary for that matter.
I mean, there is some gross out stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, like you said, the custard scene, and that whole scene. I mean, where her cheek falls off and she eats it, or and all that stuff.
The ear comes off. She eats it with the pearl
she eats her
earring
ear,
in it. Yeah.
Oh, for me it was the scene before when they're getting ready. The gravity
the
of the flap, the skin flap falling open, and like him gluing it. I'm like, oh, that's rough.
Don't touch it. You'll wrinkle. It'll. That's what a lot of the good comedies, you need a good straight man. And Lionel in this film, God bless his heart, played wonderfully by Timothy Balme, I think it's pronounced, or Balme. Balm. Him playing it straight, I think, helps sell so much of this. Rather than just being told, like, where the mom like literally rips a piece of herself. Instead of him, like, he's shocked for just a second, but then he thinks of, oh, hey, I've got Gorilla Glue. And he puts, the glue on it and tells her not to touch it because it'll throw it off. You know what I mean? Or you've got 4 zombies at the table after the event in the great, and he's serving them. He's like rolling with it. So he's the straight man through all this. And I really think that his performance helps sell these scenes. I mean, what'd you think of Lionel, Dawn?
He is definitely one of my favorite horror comedy characters throughout this, because like you said, he rolls with it. He is a really great straight man for this. He doesn't really stop to think how preposterous it is, or he doesn't really stop to think or use any sort of logic. He just reacts and deals with the next situation without thinking about it. And I love that about him. I love that he, let's just throw mom and the nurse McTavish in the basement, and then sit next to the radio, turning it up louder and louder and louder, hoping Paquita doesn't hear them, because all we need, we can't ask for help. Obviously, we have to hide this.
help me out with this. Beyond the contrivance of it being funny and like helping the movie happen, why doesn't Lionel at any point just tell people, hey, there's freaking zombies running around? Like, especially at the point where he's got 4 of them sitting around the lunch table or whatever. I mean, I never quite got that, because he must know he can't keep it a secret unless, I mean, it's 1957, so maybe he hasn't seen zombie movies as we would know them. He honestly doesn't know what's going on, but it just seemed weird.
My guess that the thought process was he might have considered doing something right up until Uncle Les shows up and threatens him with the police, and then all of a sudden he's terrified of going to prison or something.
Going to prison because the dead are walking the earth again?
I'm sure that, yeah. He doesn't seem like a very intelligent young man.
I don't know if it's because of a fear of going to prison. I think it's more because it'd be a shorter movie.
Yeah, contrivance, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
and as I mentioned before, that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing because it's a little bit long. In the extended cut.
Well, just watch the 90-minute cut.
I think I think now that I've experienced the longer version, I'm going to stick to the 87 or whatever it is.
That, and going back to the whole mommy dearest thing, it's probably also has to do with abuse and protecting his mother.
Well, they do play. I don't believe we're taking this. I'm taking it to this depth. I apologize, Blake's out of puddles, but they set up early about proper societyism. I mean, we are talking late 50s. His grandma was very happy that she was going to be in this league that is a very prestigious but very kind of pinky up, hoity-toity group, and they're a little worried about societal position in their neighborhood, at least, and perception. So part of it could be, mommy dearest and the abuse from mom, but also is he still has that ingrained to him of how he has to play off like everything's okay. Yeah. No, I ain't got mom in the basement. Or, oh, you found your dad's stag films? Is that the one with the donkey and the chambermaid? Sorry.
I want to know who is taking those photographs that he found in the chest upstairs. Oh. They got progressively worse / better as they went along, as he got deeper in the stack.
Yeah. Well, where he finds out the family secret where daddy was actually cheating on mommy.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, he finds the photographs of dad with the mistress, and they're like having a nice little picnic, and then they're kissing, and then he's like on top of her. I'm like, who's taking these pictures?
Mommy.
Sam Spade.
Sam Spade. Sam Spade. Nice. I mean, this film is just, it shouldn't work, but it works so well. It does. From the cast, I mean, you got to have commitment from the cast on this, which they're all committed. And I think part of the reason too, that is the appeal is it's not just our main characters, Paquita and Lionel, because some films like this, that's the main focus. Those are the ones that are developed the most. And you've got characters around them that are kind of fodder, but we get some wonderful characters, don't we, Glenn, including the priest.
I kick ass for the Lord. Father McMurdy. Yeah.
I love the priest. Would you say that the supporting cast really helps sell this movie though?
Some of them. I mean, some of them don't do a whole lot.
Sure.
But I mean, like him and his uncle. I mean,
yeah, the nurse is kind of there until she turns zombie. Then she plays more of an integral role of entanglement. Don, what do you think of the supporting cast around our two main lovebirds?
The ones that they actually. The ones they had fun with, they definitely had fun with. Mm-hmm. I don't think they did quite enough with Void, which for whatever reason I thought his name was Boyd for the longest time. But
yeah, I thought it was Boyd too. But
yeah, but it's Void. The best part about him was his entrails.
Yeah.
That was I didn't think they did quite enough with him right up until that point, and then that was the best for me. But yeah, the ones
Mm-hmm.
there were some they could have done more with, like Roger, the
Yeah.
other love interest. There were a few
Yeah.
amusing bits with him, like hey, I'm a Wisconsin girl. I loved the Bart Starr reference.
Yes.
But yeah, he was kind of just blah. I mean, he wasn't even a whole lot of a romantic rival.
Yeah. But
yeah.
That kind of goes along with what you're saying, though, Ian, that you wouldn't mind even seeing that romance storyline between Paquita and Lionel, and you could have had the milkman or the meat man, excuse me, it was the meat man, more involved in the story. Would you like the supporting characters in this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much on the same page as everyone else. I mean, my biggest disappointment, I think, is that, and maybe someone can do this later on. Well, I don't think the age would work because this movie's 30 years old now, but the priest is such a cool, fascinating character, but he only really gets about 5 minutes of screen time before he becomes just another zombie cartoon prop. The idea of him, saying, "Oh, I kick ass for the Lord," and, just having this like really daffy, great expression, like when he's leading the funeral, and then he goes out in the graveyard and he's fighting all the zombies. Like, I want to know more about that guy. I'd watch a prequel movie about him. If there's someone like a millennial who could pull off being that guy as a young kid, and even great, like a teenage, like see that guy in seminary, with like say Steve Martin premature white hair. I don't want him to change the hair. I want him to be young, have the white hair, and kick supernatural ass. I would watch the hell out of that movie.
Yeah, he totally wasn't fazed by any of it.
No, he wasn't. I've got this son. I kick ass for the Lord. That is that is just a wonderful scene, because yeah, you get all these homages to, Bobby Durst, as we mentioned, and Evil Dead, and then in the middle of it, we get a kung fu action fight that is a kung fu action fight. I mean, this has some choreography in it. This isn't just guys kind of like, the priest knows his shit.
And the cool thing about it is he's so good at fighting up until he gets, the baby flings on him and bites him in the neck, I think is what happened.
Yeah.
Or
was
it a head or something?
The head.
Yeah.
That's right. Because the baby's later, right?
Yeah.
But he's so good at fighting, you almost wonder if he is like Heaven's assassin or something like that. He moonlights as someone who fights the undead. It's a fascinating little backstory.
Now I want a movie called Heaven's Assassin. Now I want that's
Who do you think kept the gremlins at bay during World War II?
There you go. Oh.
Yes.
It's
kind of like that comic book Hack Slash. From a number of years ago, where they had their kind of the whole thing was there was this I think it's like a girl in her 20s and this giant, almost like murderous dude who they kind of partner up to go fight basically villains from various slasher films, but kind of off-brand versions of those.
Mm-hmm.
I'd watch a movie with the priest taking care of business and Gremlins and Jason and Leatherface, because God knows per our earlier discussion they have to do something interesting with Leatherface.
Jason would be a whole lot less threatening if someone kicked his legs off.
Yeah. Which had to be an homage to the Black Knight from Holy Grail. The way that guy dies, the guy who gets the head, who eventually does the priest in, that had to be an homage to the Holy Grail, because the way the torso is shot and the way he takes him out, I'm just like, that's the Black Knight from the Holy Grail.
I just love that the priest gets impaled on a statue that's like pointing
up.
upward at a really awkward angle. It's like, what? What's the story behind that statue?
Oh, the fact that scene just exists is a beautiful thing. And it's another thing too with this film is he commits fully to the gimmick. Especially when you get to that third act. I mean, you get the zombie baby going on. You've got, as you mentioned, the lady with the glowing head, when she isn't just there for a minute, she shows up again later, and she's actually the reason why the place catches on fire. I mean, you get the entrails, which end up having a little face that end up causing a major. I'm sorry, I just said entrails and face, but it does, which looks at in the mirror, which causes a major problem for him. It's not just a gimmick of, oh, it's alive and it goes off screen. It comes back again. He commits to his gimmicks here, Ian. And do you think that helps with this final scene, and the fact that these aren't just one-off, like instant, oh, here, we did this funny thing, we're going away? I mean, it comes back later.
It does. And I think part of the, we've all seen the hero dangling from a rope precariously above danger. I feel like Peter Jackson is like, yeah, but what if instead of a rope, it was intestines? and the intestines at the top were coming alive and forming like snakes. And so there's a threat from above and below. And then he's being swung like a pendulum. There's so much invention in it's not just a Gore demo reel. There's real thought put into this. I love the bathroom scene, which I'm still trying to figure out. The bathtub where the greaser, I think, is in, cut in half, and he ends up being shoved into the toilet, and then he puts the seat down to like further entrap him. Yeah. It's like they found this house and like, okay, what can we use to kill people in this house? What could the furniture possibly do in a zombie invasion?
Yeah, this poor house they destroy. I did not want to be the cleanup crew for this house, but yeah, the commitment to the gimmick you don't see a huge amount in horror comedies. It's like one and done. And I mean, especially the baby. Glenn, you get a zombie baby, are you going to take it out for a walk in the park? I mean,
yeah, well, and that's what he used the budget excess for. When he came in under budget, he went and filmed all the stuff at the zoo with the baby.
What? Really?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yep. He had $45,000 or a pound, whatever it was, and that's what he spent all of that shooting. That's that whole stuff. Yep.
The whole sequence with Lionel taking the baby out to the park and beating the shit out of the baby in front of all the.
Yep. He's a bit hyperactive. There's this one character, is this guy at the party, and I feel like I missed something here because at one point he makes a reference to pedophilia, and then later on he comes back and says some of my best friends are pedophiles. I'm like, what is this character? Did you guys catch this? He's like that nerdy guy with the glasses. Yeah, I don't know what his deal was.
I caught the line, but I wasn't quite sure what he was in reference to. I think one of the zombies looked underage. I don't know.
Because I think it was the greaser was like
on
top of him on the couch, and then I think Lionel pulls him off, and the guy mutters something about pedophiles, and then later on the guy shows up in the kitchen. He's all freaked out. He's like, "So my best friend's a pedophile." I'm like, what? Is he confessing something because he thinks he's going to die? I don't know.
I'm not sure. I caught that line too, but then, it passes quickly when you get a baby crawling through the skull of somebody.
The baby should have crawled through the skull of that guy. That would have been interesting.
Probably should have.
That cracked face of the girl with the triangular glasses at the end and the baby coming through. Oh, it's beautiful. You can tell it's fake, but you can just tell that it's fake.
Yeah, but it's so well crafted. Like all the gore in this final Gonzo party scene with the most creative use of a lawnmower. I mean, all of it. I know I've gotten on soapboxes before, but Dawn, practical's the way to go. I think this film ages very well because of all this practical gore, wouldn't you say?
Yes. I mean, clearly Peter Jackson used this as a showcase for his skills, because I know he did a lot of these practical effects himself.
Sure.
And he was trying to challenge himself, and see what new thing he could come up with that wasn't just the same old, same old. But yes, practical is most definitely the way to go. Whether it's the little stop motion Harryhausen, the Harryhausen Sumatran rat monkey, or the puppets.
I'm sorry. Every time you say rat monkey,
Yeah.
There's so many things about this film that make you laugh. It's but Glenn, do you think this film still holds up, especially with the effects?
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's actually like the blood is really, really good looking blood. Especially for that time, because so often you have blood that's like way too red or it's way too watery. This looks, I mean, it looks like they just went out and used real blood.
So did you read that they made that one of the core ingredients of the blood they used was maple syrup? So after a day of sitting under all those lights, the maple syrup went rancid. So a lot of the disgust that they were exhibiting wasn't exactly fake.
A la Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So there you go. That's another ode to another.
And I think that happened with Joe Pilato, right, in Day of the Dead, or, where they, the scene where he gets ripped apart. Something had happened, I think, with the freezer or the refrigeration of the parts they were using for that, and yeah, he was not happy. But I mean, talking about the blood and the effects, and also just the impressiveness of the way this whole thing is put together. There's that scene somewhat early on when everything's kind of falling apart. And Lionel ends up trying to run, but he ends up running in place, and he looks down. It's because there's so much blood on the floor. But you see these actual feet like running in place through this blood, like almost slipping and falling, but not quite. You're like, how is this person not slipping and falling? Because there's like no friction on this floor. It's amazing.
Yeah, you get the actual foot streaks in there, which is really cool.
I felt like I was going to fall over, and I was watching in a chair.
Yeah, it's just this impressive sequence that had to. I mean, they shot this in 11 weeks, and I'm guaranteeing you this last segment probably took a good chunk of that production because it's so involved. Glenn, you got a favorite gore scene in this film?
I mean, just watching the hands going into the lawnmower blades is fantastic. although actually probably my favorite is the food processor.
Oh yeah, where they get a number of attempts before they're actually successful in chopping something up in the food processor too, which I thought was great. I didn't quite understand that, but at the same time, I didn't care because it was a great gimmick of how Lionel was chopping up all these people, and Paquito was in the kitchen just picking up parts and trying to food process them for like a hand, and like just get rid of the parts the best she could. It's just hilarious.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Mark.
Yeah, I guess. I don't think that's exactly what they had in mind in the corporate promo material. But Ian, what about you? Got a favorite gore scene in particular, or gimmick?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it before. I think it's when the half greaser gets slowly, or not slowly, but ground down into nothingness inside the lawnmower blade.
Well, what helps make the lawnmower blade death interesting is one, the greaser's the guy who keeps falling apart but manages to put himself together enough to where, like, at one point he's got his legs over his shoulders, so he's holding onto the legs so he can still walk because his lower torso is out. But he doesn't get chopped up right away in the lawnmower. He's just spinning. It takes Lionel holding his hand so he stays put, so he can grind him down, because otherwise he would have just kept spinning. I just love that extra little bit. I'm like, that's cool.
A close second also involves the greaser. When he first gets out of the basement, there's the guy who gets stuck underneath the door, and the greaser rips his entire rib cage out of his body and like throws it across the room. Oh, so good.
So good. Dawn, what about you?
I actually like when toward the end of that scene when after Les meets up with Vera and Vera exacts her specific revenge on him. That's Lionel's mom. Sorry.
Yes.
And then Paquita, he tries to sneak up behind Paquita, and Paquita just grabs him by the spinal column, spins him around, and
yeah, because his body comes out a la Ode to the Thing, where his neck is all bobbing and his head looks like Wilford Brimley's head from the Thing, and he comes out and yeah, she spins him around, doesn't hesitate, just rips the spine, just like it's a beautiful death.
And smashes his head like George Carlin in a melon.
Yes, it just smashes his head. Yay, verily. You guys all picked great ones. I don't think there's ones outside of that I really except for, well, I do like, even though it resulted in the pre-skinning bit, I do like him kicking off the limbs of the guy in the, it just, I know it's a little quick, but it's just so well done because it's the actor in there, and all of a sudden you see his legs, you're like, oh, and then the arms get kicked off, you're like, oh, and then the head gets kicked. It's like, I know what you're going for there, and it's just so well edited that you're just like, it's just wonderfully put together. So I have asked my crew members to bring something to topic if we maybe haven't talked about it yet, or a question for the group. So we will start with Dawn. Did you have something we didn't talk about already that you maybe wanted to bring up?
We kind of touched on it, I guess. I was actually going to ask what your favorite, how to put this, but more specifically than I was originally going to. Favorite puppet prop.
Oh,
was
nice. Yeah. Favorite prop. I like that. Glenn, did you have a favorite prop in here that you liked?
Oh, man. I mean, I do. I don't know if it's really, I mean, it's more of a scene when dude's head is all back and he's just putting the food down the esophagus.
Of the nurse, because the nurse
the nurse
because the nurse had her head, and that's a wonderful scene too, where they're eating, and as she's eating, it's coming out the
slit. And he just pulls it back and
he just starts feeding her directly, because why chew when you can just go direct down
the head is backwards, smiling as it's
That's the thing, is the head's got movement in that. It's not like he's just pulling back something that's lifeless. It's
She's a giant a giant undead Pez dispenser.
Yeah, exactly. What about you, Ian? You got a favorite puppet gimmick here?
I don't know if it's a puppet, but there is a scene where, I think, again, it's early in the zombie party attack, where I don't even remember if it was a man or a woman. Someone gets their face like ripped off, like the entire flesh of their head gets ripped off and kind of exposes the muscle skeleton. I don't know if that was an actor, having their stuff pulled off. I didn't go back and rewind it, but yeah, that was if that was a puppet, it was very well done. If it wasn't, then hey, it still worked.
And he was still alive, because later he pops up.
Right.
Yep.
Later on, it pops up with all the skin gone, and that a la early Hellraiser. Dawn, what about you for your own question?
I actually I mentioned it. I actually like the innards. The GI tract. The
GI tract, that the living GI tract, which at one point covers his face like an alien.
Yep.
Yeah. All complete with the wrap around the neck. I mean, there's so many references in here. You start to watch. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna go off a little bit differently. I think my favorite puppet gimmick is the embalming scene, where the coroner forgets that their auto embalmer is actually putting it in the fluids, and he goes down there and her body is just all puffed up already, and she explodes and the formaldehyde's just spewing through. But what makes that better is, as Glenn did the motion, then the coroner goes, oh no, we don't have time. And he just pops the eyes back into the skull. That whole puppet setup there that they had there is just beautiful. It was just so well done. And it's just such a great gimmick, because that's where you get Peter Jackson's cameo as well, because he plays the coroner's assistant. He's the guy that's like, this is coming out of your pay. Sorry. Oh, wow. Good question. Good question. Glenn, did you have a topic or question we haven't covered that you may want to bring to the group?
I mean, mine was going to be your favorite death.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. This happens.
I took away your thunder. Ian, what about you, sir?
Why don't we see more gutsy horror comedies anymore?
I was thinking of that, because I'm like, maybe because they can't be done well, or people are afraid to. I don't know.
I blame the scary movies.
Oh, yeah.
Because they did in my opinion, horror comedy so poorly that it's just killed it.
I mean, I'm trying to think of like the last legit horror comedy that I can think of, and I'm probably going to miss a lot because I didn't sleep well last night. It's been a long day, but Jeremy Saulnier's Murder Party. He did this, before, like, I think Green Room and Blue Ruin, but that is a bona fide like horror comedy in that there's a lot of like it's more like a weird kind of a thriller thing. I haven't watched it in a few years, but yeah, it's not a parody and it's not a straight up horror movie with a lot of gag effects. It's just kind of got its own rhythm, much like Dead Alive or Evil Dead 2. I think you're right, Glenn. There might be something like people, if you try and pitch horror comedy, someone's like, "Oh, it's gonna be like another scary movie." It's like, no, not a parody, a horror comedy.
Yeah, I mean, there actually have been a couple, because I just remembered Willy's Wonderland.
Oh yeah, Willy's Wonderland.
I haven't seen that. That was the Nicolas Cage one, right? I didn't see that.
Yes.
Yeah, Nicolas Cage one. That one I could see. That's a good horror comedy. At least recent one that they came out with.
But I think for the most part, even the ones that I would consider like horror comedies that have done well, it's not that so over the top.
Mm-hmm.
Like as far as like the gore and stuff goes, like you have in a Dead Alive or an Evil Dead. Because I mean, you had Zombieland and you had The Babysitter.
Yeah,
and I consider those comedies, but they're not this type of like horror, that's so over the top type.
That Gonzo, the actual Gonzo type of like full commitment, like we're just going crazy. There is some restraint to not just go that far out there with it, or just push the envelope of what you're gonna do. Because there is still a concern, can we market this, I think, at the end of the day nowadays. Whereas I don't think I didn't get the impression, at least from, and it can be said for a lot of shot on video or even shot on film, a lot of those early days, yes, here's my another lawn, you forgot to cut that part over there. There didn't seem that as heavy a concern when they were making these films. Can we market this? Can we get this sold? They were making it because they wanted to make a Gonzo horror film. And it just so happened that, hey, this video distributor needed material. Oh, you made something. It's 90 minutes. Yeah, okay, fine. Give me the rights. Here's some money. And we'll distribute it. Whether or not it was really great or not. But it was still, most of these films were made because they were made by people who just want, and I'm not saying it isn't now, but there is still the behind concerned, I'm sure, that can we market this and make some money off of it, where these earlier films don't have that feeling like, we got a straight, I don't think Peter Jackson said, I can't have the 8-foot tall granny demon womb open up and swallow Lionel, because that's just too much.
Yeah, you're not going to find that in Zombieland.
I'm not going to be able to sell that.
It's interesting too, because they would say that's too much, but then they'll they'll do like all the Saw movies where it's so much more graphic.
Yeah. And it's
that's fine.
And it's in a more serious, disturbing context than
absolutely
your horror.
But they'll look at it Dead Alive and they'll say, but there's so much blood. And I'm like, yes, which makes it goofy, not scary, and not really gory.
I mean, that's kind of the reason why some of those martial arts films, as people make fun of them, have the 10,000 psi pressure heart when they cut a limb off at it, because it's outrageous. So you're not, it takes you out of it to where you're not, oh man, that guy got chopped up. No, he's shooting blood and literally, power washing his siding with his blood. That's
man. Now I want to do a horror comedy movie.
Don, what would you
Blood
say?
Geyser, the geyser that bled blood.
Make that movie, Glenn.
I can see the poster already. It'd be beautiful. Real easy to do. Don, what do you think? A reason why we don't get horror comedies like this? Well, I would say like commitment to these horror comedies like we used to.
Money, support from studios. I think a lot of films that would, even when indie filmmakers have the balls to make something completely gonzo and outrageous, and yes, even sometimes good, studios won't pick it up unless, Trauma, and who takes Trauma seriously?
Well, that's why Trauma distributes its own stuff, because no one else would.
And they pick up pretty much anything.
Yeah, they'll pick up pretty much any indie film, which is a good thing. I mean, at least it gets eyes on it out there.
Well, there was a time when I saw Bruce Campbell, him and Raimi were in Milwaukee, and they were talking about, this was before when people were saying, like, are you going to do an Evil Dead 4? And one of the things they brought up that I think fits is the problem with those types of movies is that they all make money eventually.
Yeah.
But no studio head wants to make money for the person who takes their job. They want to make money today, not 10 years from now.
Yeah.
It does. They don't care if a movie has legs because they want it. They want that big box office. They want the money right now. I don't care this movie could make $1 trillion over its lifetime. If it only makes $1 million that first year, it sucks, and I lose my job.
I mean, I think about like Shaun of the Dead. That was a major studio release, but it had time to find an audience and to build buzz. I think if that movie came out today, I mean, let's just pretend that the movies that inspired it and the success and everything hadn't happened, and someone just said, here's this new Shaun of the Dead movie. I think it disappears, in the middle of opening weekend. It's like, what's this weird British thing? And, it's zombies and everything, but, I don't think people are going to care. I don't know that movies have a chance to find their audience, unless it's, it's week 3 and you still haven't gone to see Spider-Man, No Way Home. That's the new version of finding your audience. It's already made $1 billion, so it can stay in the theater.
Yeah, you're right. I wouldn't see a movie like Shaun of the Dead getting theatrical release like it did today. It'd go to VOD. It'd go to maybe a limited theatrical, depending on the distributor.
It might hit like the art circuit, type
right?
Thing.
It'd be the festival circuit. It hit like
which is how I saw it.
Oh, is it?
I saw it at the Oriental Theater.
Oh, nice.
Or the Downer, one of the two. But that's where I saw it.
Milwaukee's Art House Theater. That's where I was traumatized by many a film when I was younger, and my parents took me to see movies I shouldn't have, like Allegro Non Troppo, which I have on Laserdisc, which we will cover on this episode at some time. Not this episode, but the show at some point in time. The French adult version of Fantasia. But
what do they do with those brooms? Sorry.
Yeah, not exactly, but there's a Coke bottle involved. But that's where I saw the Lord of the Rings in that too. But yeah, it would have Shaun of the Dead. I could see it would have been one of those where it would have probably hit the festival circuit, gotten buzzed there, and then picked up by a distributor who might have done limited theatrical, but not a wide release, and just gone straight to VOD if it came out today, because of the other content that's out there. And like you said, the risk factor is no longer there. None of these studios really want to take a risk with these. I mean, and that's kind of a shame. I mean, look at the films that got wide release back in the day. We're doing our horror of 1988, but even the other ones, like some of the Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, I remember coming out in theatrical release, and it's just like, holy crap. And there was so much controversy when that came out. Or Silent Night, Deadly Night came to actual theaters. Those types of films nowadays probably would never have seen a big screen. At least Silent Night, Deadly Night. No one would ever had the balls to actually release that to the theater.
I remember Blood Beach, walking by the Fox and seeing the posters for Blood Beach.
Nice.
I was too young to see that.
So yeah, I think that partly is the thing is people, marketing and money does enter into it. I mean, you do get occasional films like Don and I think we've all seen it. Glenn, I know, has seen it. Cadaver Christmas. Cadaver Christmas is one, if you haven't seen it, that's in the vein of Dead Alive. It's a true straight up horror comedy that's got some wonderful bits and wonderful spirit to it. And it is a horror comedy, I would say, that's in that spirit of Dead Alive. Not maybe quite that caliber, but very close. It's got that timing, that comedy. It knows what it is, and it's got a gimmick to it too. What?
It's a short film, but Fist of Jesus.
Oh yeah, Fist of Jesus. Yes, Fist of Jesus.
Yes.
It's like a Kung Fu Christ or something.
Oh God, yeah, it's on YouTube.
It's Spanish, right? I believe from Spanish.
It's Spanish. Yeah. I have the video game. They made a platform video game. It's on Steam, or at least it was. Yeah, there's a Fist of Jesus video game. Yeah, where you're Jesus and you kill Roman soldiers. It's wonderful. Well, I mean, we have gotten those other kinds of ones, like here. Psycho Gorman is another one. Turbo Kid, but those aren't quite the horror film. I mean, they're really more tongue-in-cheek type of stuff, more so than I think Dead Alive. Dead Alive, and we'll wrap it up here. I think it treads that fine line between being just over the top, like parody, but also not too serious. It treads that wonderful line of it's still a movie. It's not just gimmicks. You have a story here. You have characters. You have elements, a narrative, and as crazy as it is, it's a movie. It's not just a ball of gimmicks like you guys mentioned. The scary movies, fuck those, man. After 2, Scary Movie 2 has a great gimmick in it, but after that, it was just like, wow, what are they even doing? Yeah.
Well, they were doing like the War of the Worlds parodies by the 4th or the 5th one.
Yeah, they were suddenly working in other movies into it for the parody and that, and Leslie Nielsen was like, yeah, I'll take the money, but yeah, sure, so yeah, I highly recommend it. I think we'll go around. Final thought with Dead Alive. Dawn, influential film, and final thought on it.
Definitely an influential film. If as we've mentioned repeatedly, it the more you watch it, the more you recognize the films that it has been influenced by, and the films that Jackson loved. I would definitely recommend it to fans of the Evil Dead franchise. Oh, hell, I'd recommend it to everybody. But that's just the kind of person I am.
Glenn, what about you? Final thoughts? Influential film?
Absolutely. I mean, and anyone who is like into horror, this any type of horror like that, I mean, yeah, this is definitely one that people have seen, people appreciate. I mean, it's still, one of the bloodiest movies ever.
Right. Yeah. As we mentioned, 300 liters of fake blood alone in the final scene.
5 gallons a minute they were pumping out.
Yeah, when he's chopping up guys and getting sprayed with the fake blood, 5 gallons of that's a lot of blood. And he looks it too. I mean, Lionel, again, the actor, God bless him, he's committed to this because he is caked. At one point, you don't even see his face. There's just nothing but bloody, gory syrup on his entire body. You don't even see his face anymore. So yeah. And Ian,
it inspired me in one of my shorts. So.
Oh, nice. Which one?
My zombie one.
Your zombie one, yeah.
Handy.
We were
right?
throwing blood at Doc.
Yeah.
We had squirt bottles, then it ended up just taking the whole bucket and and that blood stunk.
What was it?
Well, it was corn syrup, but because there was an entrail scene in a previous movie, because we shot 2 shorts the same day. The previous movie there was entrails, and I used real pig intestines.
Oh.
I bought them at the grocery store. I soaked them in salt water, then I soaked them in bleach water. 3 times I did this cycle, rinsing and soaking, and they still smelled awful. You got to think about it. Poor Lee, who had to sit there with the entrails. But yeah, then the bucket just kind of, because I wanted it to look like really bloody, so I let them soak in the bucket of fake blood for like 2 days.
Oh. Whew.
I mean, it was in the refrigerator, but still.
I love it. Ian, your final thought with this film?
Oh yeah, I mean I stand by my initial assessment from 15 or 20 years ago, which is that it's great. I was kind of soured on it by watching this kind of extended cut, which just I think very few horror movies need to be more than 90 minutes, and that an hour 43 just kind of like overstayed its welcome in some odd places. But yeah, it's inventive. It's Don used the word love to talk about. You see that the movies that Peter Jackson loves, and you can see him transferring that passion into every frame of this movie. Take out the gore effects, take out the whole premise. Just watch what he does with the camera. All the crazy, like Warner Brothers, up people's noses angles. There's no boring angle in the entire runtime. It's phenomenal. So yeah, high recommend.
He even does a Spielberg pull focus. The whole
yeah.
He even does that from Jaws. He does that shot, and they're like, "Oh hey," it's kind of fun to go, "Oh hey, I know what he's doing there." And yeah, I agree. This is fun. It's a classic for a reason. There's a reason why everybody talks about it. If you haven't seen it, shame on you. You should, because if you're a horror fan, this is a fun move. This is one you pop popcorn. You can get a group together. You just watch and just let it, just experience it, because I mean, you will catch so many things. Even watching it again, and I've watched it many times, I caught other things. And like I said, I caught some other references this time that didn't click before with me. And now watching them again, I'm like, oh, that's from that movie, and you can see the talent here, and you can see it even in this little horror movie. There's a lot of talent that Peter Jackson comes through, and yeah, it's what helps make this movie last. So there you have it, folks. Thank you so much, and we're just gonna go around now. It's a license to shill. I'm not sure if Dawn or Glenn have anything to shill, but we could definitely give them the opportunity. So Glenn, you got anything to show? You mentioned you have movies. You got a channel. You got some short films out there. You can.
Oh, they're so old now. I made them like 75 years ago.
They weren't 75 years ago.
No, you can find my stuff at what do I have it? In a Bunker Productions on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So you can find them out there. There's 3 shorts that I did for almost no money.
I have them on my shelf, so I have Hell and Prey.
You better.
I do. I got at least 2 copies of Hell. So there you go. So there's
Sadly, the hearse is no longer with us.
that's a shame. That was a beautiful hearse. So I do enjoy that hearse. Maybe we'll steal the one that's up here that people are driving around. Oh wait, I didn't say that. You didn't hear that. I'll edit that out later. Just a joke. Ha ha. Dawn, you got anything to shill?
Sure. So, Sawdust City Fright Fest. It's a thing.
It is a thing.
It happened last October. Beautiful downtown Oshkosh. Planning on happening again this October. Beautiful downtown Oshkosh. Announcements should be coming in the next month or so for plans, submissions, fun things. I believe we have it scheduled for the second week of October.
Yep, second weekend of October still, as far as now, tentative plan. More details to come for sure.
So Sawdust City Fright Fest. .com.
I think it's .com. It might be .net, but there's also on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram. There's Sawdust City Fright Fest is everywhere. You probably don't want it to be.
There you go. There it is.
Sawdust City frightfest.com. Yeah, we got some interviews and stuff out there from last year and our listing from last year as well. # support indie cinema. Thank you, Dawn. And Ian, I know you got something to shill, so license to shill, sir, shill away.
Well, I'm Ian Simmons, as you can see on the screen, from Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. I also have a YouTube channel, which you just go to YouTube and look up Kicking the Seat. We do movie reviews and interviews and roundtables and all that good stuff. And yes, Mark, thank you very much. We do also a weekly live stream about whatever Disney Plus, Marvel, Star Wars property is on at a given time. And right now it's the Book of Boba Fett, a.k.a. Bring Back the Mandalorian. So you can watch that live every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Central. Mark, actually, I want to invite you to join us live next week for the big finale. I've invited you and Sajiwa to come on, and he's in.
Ooh, next week. That's what time again? At Central Time? 8:30. Yeah. I should be able to make it because I will have my interview. I should be done by then, depending on if it goes long. So,
who are you talking to? Can you share, or is it a surprise?
I could share. It is one of the creators and composers of the Genetic Repo, the Genetic Opera. I will be interviewing Darren Smith, I believe the name is.
Cool.
And actually, the reason I'm interviewing him is because of Darren Smith, because he is part of a film that's coming out at the end of next week, Friday, called The Second Age of Aquarius. Press release was just released out this week. It was directed by Stacey Lane Wilson, who is daughter of now, unfortunately, the late founder of The Ventures. And so she is a producer and filmmaker in her own right. And she's got a new, it's kind of a fun, romantic type of comedy coming out, indie. I just got done watching it tonight. It's fun, but I'm interviewing him as well as the 2 stars of the film next week. So those will drop at the end of next week when the film is released. So yeah,
nice.
Second Age of Aquarius, the film is called. So check it out if you can, folks. It's going to be a lot of fun. It will be on Vimeo and VOD next Friday. So like 10 days. So from when we're recording this. So there you go.
Cool.
So there you have it, folks. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Thank you to all our viewers out there. Subscribe, check out our stuff on Special Mark Productions. And if you're curious, we even have a Patreon. It's very cheap and a lot of stuff out there for very cheap because I'm cheap and easy. I hope you enjoyed Deaduary. We got some interesting films coming up. Dead Silence, Dead Again, and of course our horror of 1988 film will be Dead Heat. So look for those this month in Deaduary, and I would just say a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.